welcome to this explainer. Okay, today we're putting on our detective hats to investigate a mystery that honestly haunts FinOps and data engineering teams everywhere. I'm talking about that unexpected, massive cloud budget. If you've ever just stared at a monthly cloud invoice and wondered how on earth it got so high, well, you're absolutely in the right place. We're going to decode Snowflake pricing and uncover exactly where your budget is leaking. So, why is your Snowflake bills so high? It's a question that triggers instant financial anxiety, isn't it? You know, the whole promise of the cloud was always that you only pay for what you use. But as your workloads scale and your data architecture inevitably grows more complex, those costs become incredibly tricky to control. They can literally skyrocket before you even realize what's happening. Okay, let's dive right into this and figure out exactly what's going on behind that invoice. Here's our quick game plan for today. We'll start by decoding Snowflake's pricing model. Then we'll spot those hidden traps in cloud waste. After that, we'll talk right-sizing your virtual warehouses, dig into micro-partitions and query pruning, master Snowflake clustering, and finally, look at automating your cost savings. All right, let's kick things off with part 1, decoding Snowflake's pricing model. To really understand the scene of the crime here, we need to take a quick bottom-up tour of Snowflake's architecture. Basically, the pricing fundamentally revolves around 3 core pillars: storage, data transfer, and compute. Now, storage is generally quite cheap. Snowflake boasts a highly efficient 3-to-1 compression ratio, and data transfer costs, those are mostly situational, applying mainly to egress when you're moving data across regions or clouds. But look at that massive slice right there, compute. For most customers, compute, which is measured in Snowflake credits, makes up the vast majority of the bill. So this is absolutely where our investigation has to focus. Moving on to part 2, hidden traps and cloud waste. And this brilliantly illustrates where things go wrong. It's time to identify the primary suspects causing those massive budget overruns. You'll see Snowflake's virtual warehouses range from extra small all the way up to massive multi-X large sizes. But notice how the credits consumed per hour scale geometrically. An extra small is 1 credit an hour, a small is 2, a medium is 4, and a large is 8. Now, I know it's so tempting to just default to a medium or large warehouse just for safety. But going from a small to a large isn't just a tiny bump. It is a 4 times cost increase. If your queries are fast and simple, you're basically paying a massive premium for zero proportional performance benefit. And here's another crucial number you've got to burn into your memory: 60. Snowflake bills compute by the second, right? But there is a 60-second minimum increment every single time a warehouse is activated. Think of it exactly like a taxi meter. You get in the cab, the meter starts, and you owe the minimum fare even if you only drive for 3 seconds. If you have aggressive auto-suspend settings that constantly turn the warehouse on and on for tiny little queries, you're paying for a full minute every single time it fires up. And honestly, these traps create some absolute horror stories in the industry. You've got over-provisioned warehouses just doubling or quadrupling costs. You got cache thrashing, or that taxi meter effect just bleeds your budget completely dry. And then there are forgotten serverless features. Let me share a real example from the sources. One team set up a temporary development environment with materialized views and search optimization. Because those serverless features don't auto-suspend like normal warehouses do, they just ran, completely forgotten, for 30 days. The result? They racked up $44,640 in charges, just for a dev environment. Unbelievable, right? Okay, let's look at part 3, right-sizing your virtual warehouses. Let's pivot from agitating the problem to actually solving it, starting with the single most powerful lever you have in your FinOps toolkit. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the real-world impact of paying attention to this stuff. A media analytics team was running 20-second queries on a medium warehouse. They right-sized by simply dropping down to a small warehouse. Their query time increased by just 4 seconds, but their compute costs dropped by 50%. That saved them roughly $38,000 annually. The big takeaway here is that smaller isn't inherently better, and bigger isn't always worse. It's strictly about matching the compute size to your specific workload requirements. Next up, part 4, micro-partitions and query pruning. Let's dive a bit deeper into the technical mechanics and see exactly how Snowflake natively saves you money. Well, if you let it. When you ingest data into Snowflake, it doesn't just sit there in one giant lump. Snowflake automatically divides and stores your data into what are called micro-partitions. These are small, self-contained units, usually between 50 and 500 megabytes of uncompressed data, and they're organized in a highly efficient columnar format. This automatic division is exactly what allows Snowflake to process data in parallel and maintain such massive scalability. And because of those micro-partitions, Snowflake can perform this absolute magic trick called query pruning. Snowflake stores metadata about each partition, like the maximum and minimum values it contains inside. So let's say you run a query looking for data strictly from the year 2020. Snowflake looks at the metadata and completely skips or prunes any micro-partitions that max out in, say, 2012. By doing this, you dramatically reduce the amount of data scanned, which naturally slashes your compute time, which directly lowers your bill. Let's move to part 5 and see how this builds into mastering Snowflake clustering. To get the absolute most out of query pruning, we really need to master how our data is grouped through clustering. Here's how clustering just supercharges that pruning process. First, your data enters a temporary load table. Then, Snowflake actually reorganizes that data into micro-partitions based on cluster keys that you define. By grouping related rows together, like, say, all the data for one specific month, your queries achieve maximum pruning. Why? Because they can easily skip massive chunks of irrelevant, neatly grouped partitions. You literally aren't forcing the system to hunt through a haystack anymore. But listen, choosing the right cluster key is everything. Good cluster keys are columns you frequently use in filters that have a large enough number of distinct values to actually allow for effective grouping. Think about a date column in a fact table, or customer IDs or product IDs. Bad cluster keys, on the other hand, have very few distinct values, like gender, or they just don't help isolate data effectively for your specific queries, like zip code or state. I mean, if you cluster on gender, you're only splitting the data into a couple of massive buckets, which doesn't help pruning at all. Now, Snowflake does offer an automatic clustering feature, which sounds great because it eliminates manual maintenance. But be warned, auto-clustering absolutely does consume Snowflake credits in the background to maintain that optimal data grouping. If you go and enable it on a table that undergoes constant heavy updates and inserts, frequent DML operations, that constant background sorting can rack up some really substantial unexpected costs. So you definitely want to evaluate the trade-offs before just flipping it on. Finally, we arrive at part 6, automating your cost savings. True optimization shouldn't rely on manual guesswork. So the crucial point is that you need to put these FinOps strategies on autopilot. You should absolutely implement automated intelligent query routing. Send those interactive BI queries to a consistently available small warehouse. Route your heavy batch ETL jobs to dedicated, larger warehouses that only spin up exactly when needed. Also, configure intelligent 30-second suspension limits. Don't set them too low or you'll lose the benefits of your warm cache and hit that 60-second minimum penalty over and over again. And finally, build automation to track and deactivate serverless features when they're no longer in use. Avoid those horror stories. I really want to hammer home this central thesis from our sources today. The optimal warehouse minimizes cost while meeting performance requirements. Efficiency isn't about just blindly choosing the cheapest infrastructure out there. It is about the smartest utilization of the resources you actually have. It's about matching the tool perfectly to the job. So, I'll leave you with this final provocative question to think about. Is your data stack actually scaling business value, or is it just silently scaling costs? Take what we've covered in this explainer today, audit your own Snowflake environment, and start turning those runaway cloud bills back into strategic, predictable investments. Thanks so much for joining me, and get out there and apply these insights.